Welcome to our special podcast series for the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, running from November 25th to December 10th. With your host, Charmin Prince, and together, we'll shine a light on some of the urgent issues of gender-based violence. In this series, we'll delve into personal stories, legal insights, and share vital resources that empower individuals and communities to take action. Our goal is to raise awareness, ignite conversations, and advocate for change in our societies. Join us as we embark on this critical journey to stand against violence, uplift survivors, and promote a world free from fear and abuse. Let's get started.
Welcome to another episode of the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence podcast series. We want to thank you for supporting us, for joining us, for sharing. And today we have a guest, Brett Dellar, who is a passionate advocate for mental and emotional well-being. Having personally navigated 30 years of depression, Brett's journey has been shaped by diverse experiences, including overcoming childhood trauma, serving as a police officer and detective for 9 years, during which he was involved in 2 firearm incidents, and working in the health industry as a chiropractor for over 2 decades. He's also a qualified life coach and is dedicated to mentoring individuals struggling with mental and emotional challenges. Alongside his wife, Kim, he co-founded the Momentum Revolution and Womentum. He has delivered a TEDx talk, authored 2 books, included a bio self-help book called Soften the F Up, Being a Better Man in Today's World, and established himself as a keynote speaker, encouraging others to speak up and seek support. Brett has also developed in workshops. Live-in workshops, Charmin. Brett has developed live-in workshops and online programs aimed at being, you got a whole lot of editing to do. Aimed at being.
You don't have to make it that long. You can just break that down to really short stuff if you want.
It's all where I'm always, don't worry, I'll edit. Because, yeah. Brett has also developed live-in workshops and online programs aimed at helping people overcome adversity and improve their quality of life. He's happily married for over 16 years. Brett and Kim continue to run their chiropractic clinic while working on numerous projects that make a positive impact on others. Brett's favorite quote: "The healing you are looking for is in the fear you are avoiding." Brett, on that note, welcome.
Thank you, Charmin. Great to be here, and thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Thank you for being here. Brett, when you hear the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, what comes to mind?
Oh, it's so much. I mean, I'm obviously from Australia with my accent, but there's a massive issue in Australia at the moment where we're losing, I think, one or two women per day to domestic violence. They're being killed by their partners or spouse, and it's really starting to become very much prominent in our daily news in our society's understanding is like things need to change. And this 16 days of activism is something that needs to be spread more so, and not just for 16 days, but every single day, that we need to stand up and stop this violence. It's escalating. It seems to be escalating with time rather than reducing. It's like suicide. The numbers are increasing every year, and they should be reducing based on what we understand, what we know, and we just have to step back and go, okay, how do we move forward in a positive way so this stops? You know, the respect and the love for those people, for those women who are losing their lives or being abused and physically or mentally or emotionally abused every day, it needs to stop. And it needs to stop, you know, as of yesterday, not today.
Thank you for that. What can we do to stop it?
Well, this is the $1 million question, isn't it? It's so complicated, you know, and there's two areas I think that needs to be looked at. And the first one is, you know, looking at our children and breaking the cycle, because our kids learn from us in society. We within the home, sorry, we learn what is right and what's wrong in the home. And I speak, you know, as a chiropractor, I speak to different people every day from all different walks of life. My sister's a teacher, and I speak to a lot of teachers regularly about some of the challenges they face in the classroom. And violence is one of them, you know, and I'm talking about, not talking about teenagers, I'm talking about 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds who come to class and they have a meltdown or breakdown, and the first thing they do is turn to violence. And I've heard of teachers being bitten, other students being bitten, kicked, their hair being pulled for 20 minutes until someone comes to help them, because they can't respond or react to the kids. They've got a protocol where they cannot force a kid to let go. They have to wait until someone helps them let go. So they can't do anything against the child, which I totally understand. I totally get that. But at the same time, this 5-year-old child has got control over an adult woman, and it's, you know, where'd they learn that from? And then on the same lines, you know, physically threatening to kill them, verbally threatening to kill them. They have to hide their scissors and whatnot in the classroom so these kids don't get access to them, because if they do, someone could get hurt one day. And these are 5 and 6-year-olds. So where do those kids learn it? So I think it really starts, and not to mention the language that I've heard some of the kids that they've used different times. So where do these behaviors come from? And it's obviously, it stems from the home. You know, it's learned behavior, and if they're seeing violence every day, if they're seeing this behavior every day, you know, the child doesn't feel nurtured or loved or safe. So what does a child do? It has to protect itself. So as soon as there's one little minor threat that they perceive as a threat, they will respond and react accordingly. And I think we have to find a way to actually start in the home. That's the first thing.
Dr. Brett, thank you so much for highlighting the importance of primary socialization. I think that is something that we have not heightened awareness enough, because it is the foundation of many of our problems today, most of our social problems. And I am happy that you raised that. How important it is for men to address their childhood experiences. That's leading up to my next question.
It's I'll just, you know, you talk about the foundation at home, and I'll get back to that question in a minute. But, you know, it's all about breaking the cycle. and understanding. And I know my dad's parents weren't great. And so I remember this and I just want to share this quick story with you. There was a moment, I was about 8 years old, and we used to go and visit some family friends and go for dinner. And we were little kids at the time, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sort of thing. And we'd go and visit this couple regularly. And we'd have dinner over their place, or they'd come to dinner at our place. And then one day we didn't go to see the couple. We went and saw, instead of seeing Phil and Wendy, for example, we went and saw Phil and John. And it's like, oh, so we said, where's Wendy? It's like, well, Wendy and Phil aren't together anymore. It's now Phil and John. Well, how's that work? And as a 7-year-old, you're going, well, how's that work? And my dad was born in 1945, in the country. He's a country boy from Western Australia. And I'm sure that their mindset and that was quite different to what it is nowadays. But this is in the early 1970s. And Dad said, well, sometimes men love men and women love women, and they just love who they are as a person. It doesn't matter what sex they are. And I look back at that now, and I think, wow, the respect and the non-judgment at that period of time from a man born in 1945 was quite astounding. And he provided that foundation of, it doesn't matter if you love a man or a woman, as long as you're happy and you love someone. So for me, and I know Dad's parents, like I said, weren't great, but he broke the cycle. And he gave me a very loving, caring, nurturing, beautiful foundation. Mum and Dad were amazing. And still are to this day. So the first thing is, breaking the cycle and giving that foundation to your children. Now, if you do have, as a man, if you have had trauma, or you haven't had that foundation of love and support and nurturing like I did, and you do suffer those traumatizing moments, watching your parents fight or be abused or be emotionally controlling, and control is another one we'll get to later on. With that growing up, and just it's being bled into you from a very young age. Your values, your beliefs, your understanding, all that sort of stuff is empowered into you. And so as a child, you develop this defense mechanism. Then you get to adulthood and you still have that defense mechanism. You still have that trigger that causes you to react rather than think and behave a certain way. You react, and you react with control or violence or aggressiveness or verbal abuse or manipulation, whatever it is. That's your survival mechanism. But as an adult, that's not healthy, and it doesn't work. And all it does is cause drama and issues for all those around you, especially your spouse and your family. So as a man, if you are in that space, then you have to take responsibility. You can't use your past as an excuse. There's no way you can use your past as an excuse. You have to go, well, if I believe this and I do this and I react this way, then why do I? And then you have to take a step back and go, okay, is my past affecting me in a way that it's caused me to act like this now? And then you have to work through that and actually deal with your own shit, if you don't mind me swearing. You have to deal with your shit so you're not passing on to the next generation or passing on to your spouse, and causing the physical, mental, emotional abuse. So it's about taking responsibility and going, you know what, that's me. I have to stop that. What do I have to do to stop it? And I believe that's what my dad did. I believe he went, I don't want to be like my parent, my dad, so I'm going to be different. And I think Mum and Dad both had a pact very early on. It's all about honesty and love and support. And that's all our children have ever received. Saying that, though, if you don't mind me going a bit further with that, Shaman, we all suffer trauma at different parts of our lives. And I know you know my story, but for those who don't, I grew up in this beautiful, loving, caring, nurturing family, but I was sexually abused as a kid. So I had my own trauma. And that impacted me in a very negative way and caused me to act and behave in a very, in negative ways. It affected my mental, emotional health. I suffered from depression for 30 years. And And because I had a great foundation, I was never disrespectful to others. I was always very mindful of others, almost a people pleaser to the point where I was the opposite of being abusive. Um, and so for me, I had to, um, if I didn't have that foundation that mum and dad gave me, I might have gone down a very different path. If I grew up in an abusive relationship, and then I had that happen to me as a child, that would have just exacerbated what I already knew. Whereas I knew the love and support, but this one thing happened that impacted me in a negative way. So I drank too much. I um, used sex too much. I used work too much. I used sport too much to try and negate that. And I got through that, but it took me a long time to work through my stuff. And I took responsibility, but it took me a long time because I didn't know any better. I didn't have these conversations. I didn't hear anyone talking about this sort of thing. So for me, I was very blessed to have that foundation, but it still impacted me in a negative way. And I still had to take responsibility for my own actions. And it wasn't, yes, the sexual abuse impacted me, but I was a man. I had to take responsibility for my own life. And I didn't do that for a very, very long time. And it wasn't until I was 50 that I really did. And that's when my life and my happiness and my inner life changed. I was still very successful externally, very successful in business, very successful marriage, but it was still impacting other aspects of my life. And so no matter where we are, and whether it's just, in your own personal space, or you're then projecting onto others, if you're projecting onto others and you have to stop right now and take a long, hard look and go, okay, why am I like this? What do I have to do to change? And take responsibility and take those steps to make that change.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brett, and thank you for sharing your story with our listeners.
My pleasure.
For example, a man is listening to this podcast, has been sexually abused as a child, have serious emotional problems, maybe might be on some psychotropic medication, but has never shared his story because of the culture, because of labels and stigma, because of his own socialization. What do you say to that man or that group of men?
There's one other thing that you missed in that little series of things you talked about, and it's fear. That quote, the healing you're looking for is in the fear you're avoiding. And the fear is our biggest thing. Fear drove me and controlled me until I was 50 years old. I was afraid of looking at my past. I was afraid of dealing with my emotions. And the fear, I've been involved, you mentioned in the bio that I've been involved in 2 armed sieges, armed incidents as a police officer. And they weren't as scary as stepping into a circle with men and dealing with my childhood trauma. That was twice as scary and twice as terrifying. You feel like you're going to die. So for those men who have gone through that, you have to overcome that fear. You have to go, you know what? I've survived all of this and I'm still here. I've survived whatever's happened to me and I'm still here. But I'm not living, I'm surviving. And that's what I was doing for, 35 plus years, 44 years all up, but really 35 odd years as an adult. And that fear, you have to overcome it and you have to step forward. And the first step is speaking to someone, and I've had workshops where I've had men come to the workshop who are 35, 45, 50 years old, and they're actually telling someone for the first time, telling a group of men in a safe space that they were sexually abused, or they were physically beaten by a parent, or they were whatever it was. They haven't shared that story their entire life. They kept it a secret. And so you have to create that safe space, and you have to be able to step into that fear. And once you do it the first time, it becomes easier every time. Until you've got, it's like anything, the first time I handle a snake, I'm like a statue. It's like, don't want to move. The second time, it's a little bit easier. Third time's a little bit better until you get comfortable with it. The same with, heights. The first time you do it, if you're scared of heights, another one of my phobias. The first time you do it it's terrifying. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes, So that's why I've been skydiving. That's why I've been bungee jumping, because I want to overcome that fear. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And it's the same when it comes to talking about our personal traumas, our life challenges. The more we deal with it, the more we talk about it, the more skills we learn, the tools we use, the easier it becomes. And the more you grow, the more you heal. And that's when you start to have this inner peace, rather this inner anger or inner violence that's then projecting onto others. So overcome that fear, take that first step, speak to someone, and then have a plan of moving forward and dealing with it in a healthy way. That's that's what's worked for me. And I know that's worked for thousands and millions of men over the world. So you just have to take that first step.
What if they're saying, Dr. Brett, I hear you, but I can't sit in a group and share my story? It's, of course, the shame and the guilt. What do you say to them? Is there an alternative?
One person. Just speak to one person. Just speak to your spouse or your best mate, someone you trust. And if you haven't got someone in that circle that you really trust and you want to share with, who'll give you that support, because we have to be careful that we don't share something and we get blocked by that individual, because all it's going to do is hurt us. So you have to have someone that you truly trust and who will understand your situation. And that may have to be a mental health professional. It may have to be a counselor or a life coach or someone that you resonate with. If you resonate with them and trust them and know that they'll give you the support you need, then speak to that one person. And that's the catalyst of getting things moving forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. So, what are the benefits? Because I'm in the brain or the mindset of a male listener. What are the benefits of me telling people my story?
Oh, that's a great question. For me, I ended up. I've had a bit of a journey through there. I went and saw a psychologist initially when I was in the police force, and I saw a psychologist after I left the police force, and I sort of was okay. It never really cleared the issue for me. It was good for a period of time afterwards, and then I sort of went back. And I remember the first time I went and saw a psychologist, and all of a sudden I had this weight lifted off me, and I just started. I remember walking in, and this is just like, it's like a movie that plays in my head. It's like so vivid. And I walked in, I think I was about 27 years old. I was a detective at the time, and we could get free counseling sessions in the through the police. So I organized, and I told my boss, I said, I'm going to take a statement. I walked out the door with a file in my hand. He goes, how long you be? I said, I'll be about an hour. And he didn't know where I was going. I was making it up, obviously. But I told the sergeant, I'm out the door. I'll be back in an hour. And I went and saw the psychologist, which was just like 2 buildings away. And I walked in, and there was this young, probably 30-year-old psychologist. And I sat down, and I was in my suit and looking very professional. And she goes, so how can I help you today? And I went, I just want, oh, and I just started bawling. I couldn't control it. It'd been 22 years since it had happened. And she was like this. She was like a deer in the headlights going, oh my God, what do I have to do with this guy? And I'm trying to get my words out what had happened to me. And I was just a blubbering mess. And obviously got it out. And I remember working through that point in time. And then not long after that, I went and told my parents. And when I told my parents about it at the age of 27, 28, it was like a weight was lifted off me. And I know Mum and Dad struggled with it. Mum especially really struggled with that for a period of time. But it was just, this weight was lifted off me. And it was people I trusted. It was my sister and then my mum and dad. And I just was on a high for 3 days. Carrying that weight around just drags you down. So the first thing was just like, wow, this is really easy. I think I was on a 2 hours sleep a night, was on such a emotional high. And then obviously you come back down to normal again. And then so I started telling some of my best mates. I went around there to their wives and I said, guys, I've got something to tell you. I've struggled with this for a number of years, and so they sort of accepted it. They didn't sort of get too involved. Blokes being blokes, we went, yep, no worries, Dells. Appreciate you telling us, no worries at all. Got a couple of hugs from obviously the wives, um, and and then I went through, and then about 4 years later, I struggled again, and so I went to another psychologist. And it wasn't until I really dealt with it in a workshop that I was truly free of that trauma. So for me, initially, it's just lifting the weight and lifting the burden of carrying it by yourself. They say something shared is something halved, and it does. It lightens your load. And again, you tell the people you trust. You tell the people who you love and trust, and who will support you. And all those mates that I told about, they're still some of my best mates. I caught up with about a dozen of them on the weekend, and there's still this love and respect that we all have for each other, because we've got that bond and that understanding of who we are as individuals, and everyone's got their own stuff they have to deal with. So just by sharing it, you're unloading it, but then by using it in a positive way. So me now, I'm at that point now in my life where I don't have any emotional attachment to it. That child abuse, I thought was part of me. It was dumped. And so that distinction, that line in the sand that's not who I am. That's just what happened to me. And when I understood that, all of a sudden I could start to understand who I was as a person. And that's another journey in itself. That's another story. But you have to separate your trauma from, it's not who you are, it's just what happened to you, and then understand who you are as a person. That you're a good bloke, that you're thoughtful, loving, caring, nurturing, supportive, fun, all those sort of things. You're not just that. You are so much more than your past. So that's you just have, and like I said, for me now, I share my story because I have no emotional attachment to it, because I want to inspire others. I want to help others. So I do it out of pure joy, and I'm not saying it's joyful that what happened to me, but I get a lot of joy of seeing the reaction, the positive responses I get from people when I share my story. I know it can be triggering for some, but at the same time, it's also a lesson for them about why you're getting triggered. What can I do next? So
exactly. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I love what you said, because it's something I preach and teach. I'm not what happened to me.
Mm.
And I really love that. That's like an affirmation that I share all the time, because oftentimes we hold on to what happened to us, and it becomes an anchor that keeps us frozen in that trauma. So thank you for highlighting that. And I also like what you said that about the emotional attachments to the trauma, because what I found, and this is what I usually share, and this is from my experience, the more I tell my story, the less emotional attachment I have to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually I'm telling my story without emotional attachments. So I know that I am healed from that, and I can continue telling my story.
100%. That is so true. So beautifully put. 100%. I remember when I first started telling my story, I would get emotional with it, and probably in not a negative way, but I'd just get emotional about it. Now I tell my story, and there's like, it's not part of me anymore. It's not part of my emotions anymore. There's part of my story where I share how one of my great mates called me out, and I get goosebumps about that moment where he called me out and said, "It's time for you to do something about it." And it's like, yeah, it is. So it's a different sort of emotion. It's excitement, and the excitement you can feel because it's still a part of you. But the negative emotion from the shame, the blame, the shame, the self-blame, the guilt, and the embarrassment, and the fear, that's not attached to the trauma anymore. That's gone. So that's, yeah, beautifully put. Thank you, Shaman, for sharing.
You're so welcome. Tell us about the story with one of your mates who said sometimes it's time for you to do something about it.
Yeah, so I was doing my life coaching course, and I read the 4-hour work week, and I was, as a chiropractor, you're very physical. I played a lot of sport, Australian rules football, cricket, and so I've had a shoulder operation, and I was at the point I knew my shoulder was starting to play up, and this is going back 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And I knew that I had to have a backup plan in case I couldn't do my chiropractic work anymore. And so I thought I'll go and do a life coaching course. So I went off and did this life coaching course. And it was, so basically I live in Western Australia, in Perth, or just south of Perth. And the course is in Queensland, which is basically the same as LA to New York. And so once a month I had to fly from Perth to Brisbane to do this 2-day course. I did that 6 times over 6 months. And and I just thought I'd learn a few skills and get out. But what I didn't know is you actually get coached all the way through. And so I get there the first day and I'm thinking, uh-oh, I'm in trouble here, because I've got this deep, dark secret that no one knows about, and I don't share and I don't talk about. And I got to sit next to an amazing guy called Bruce Bell. And Bruce is an absolute champion guy, successful in almost every aspect of his life, beautiful soul, and had been working in this personal development space for quite a long time. And so we spend 2 days in the doing the course, and then we spend a month. And during that month, we have to do a whole bunch of homework, and we have to coach each other. So Bruce had to coach me, and I had to coach someone else. The next month, I would coach someone else, and someone else would coach me. And so you're using the skills that you learn in the course to actually do this coaching. And at the end of this first month, just before we're about to go back, Bruce, we're like this, we're on the computer like this, and he's based in Brisbane. And he said, Brett, you've got this issue that you don't talk about, don't you? And in my head, I'm going, there's a dog. The dog's awake. In my head, I'm going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, he knows. And I'm going, yeah. And it says, and it's impacting your life in a negative way, isn't it? I'm going, yeah. It's affecting your mental, emotional well-being more than you let on, doesn't it? Yeah. Mate, aren't you sick of living like that? And all of a sudden I had this, and I went, you know what? I am sick of living like this. I'm sick of living with depression and sick of living. And all this is running through my head very, very quickly going, I am sick of this. I don't want to live like this anymore. And I went, yeah. And he said, then don't you think you should do something about it? And in my head, I'm going, yeah, I need to do something about it. It was like he led me into it. And everything was a yes answer. I went, yeah. And then he had this beautiful pregnant pause and he went, it's time. And it felt like he reached the computer and punched me in the chest. I just felt, people say that they felt every cell in their body vibrate. That's what it felt like for me in that moment. I had this, and I knew right then in that moment, my life was going to change. I didn't know how, but because I made the decision to change, I knew it was going to change. And I went, yeah, it's time. And he goes, there's a workshop in Queensland. So it was run by the same bloke who was our facilitator in our coaching program. He goes, there's a men's workshop in 10 days' time in Queensland. Get your butt over there. I went, okay. So it took me about an hour or two to get it through my head that this is what was going to happen. I walked out to my wife, Kim, and I went, and I would never use the word child abuse. I never, ever use those words. I went, honey, I think I have to go to Queensland and go to this workshop and deal with my stuff. And she knew what that meant, my stuff. She went, okay, then when is it? I said, it's next Thursday. And she goes, okay, then we'll, rearrange the patients, book your ticket, pay for the course, and go. You're not going to say no? So the thing was like, you're agreeing to this? She goes, yes, just go and do it. Okay, just go and do it. I went, oh, okay, sort of thing. It's like the nervous little boy inside me is going, oh, the fear kicks in. And so I packed my bags, went to this workshop, and that workshop changed my life. And that conversation changed my life. And that led me to the workshop, which then allowed me to deal with my stuff in a really powerful way, in a very masculine way, in a very powerful way, in a very gentle way, in a very physical way as well. So it was all those things combined. It wasn't just one process over the weekend; it was a series of processes. But it allowed me. I became addicted to personal development and mental well-being. So I just went to workshop after workshop, online program after online program, listened to self-help book after self-help book, and 7 years later, here I am talking to you and sharing my story and going, wow, look how far I've come. It's like it was a very short period of time ago, but so much has happened in that 7 years. So I'm very blessed to be for that one conversation with Bruce. And I tell him all the time, we're still great mates, and I'll be ever so grateful. And I know he listens to some of these podcasts, and he goes, "You mention it again, mate." It's like, how can I not mention it, mate? I love you. You know what you. So yeah, so I'm very, very blessed to have him in my life.
Thank you for sharing that. And before we close, can you recreate? No, not recreate. Can you create a moment for our listeners who are in the place where you were when Bruce spoke to you?
Okay. Oh, I'm going to get emotional. Okay. If you are listening to this and you are struggling with any mental health challenges, whether it's depression, anxiety, low self-worth, low self-esteem, if you have anger issues, if you have self-doubt, if you're a people pleaser, if you're pretending you're okay when you're not, if it's any of those things that's, impacting you, but more important, impacting you first and foremost, but if it's also impacting those around you and you want to change, then, are you sick of living like that?
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence podcast series. We hope today's discussions inspired you to take action and support those affected by gender-based violence. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe, share it with others, and leave us a review. Your voice is crucial in spreading awareness and advocating for change. Stay connected with us on social media at Eagles Empowered to Soar, EETS, and visit our website at www.eaglesoar.org. For more resources and information, let's continue this important conversation and work together to create a safer world for all. Until next time, take care and stand strong.